Tonight, we're going to explore something that feels normal and easy, but was once one of the greatest challenges humans ever faced. Time. You check it every day without thinking. Historians and scientists talk about it often when they study early societies. But here's what most people don't realize. When you truly understand how ancient people tracked time, when you grasp how they measured days and seasons without clocks, it changes how you see human progress. This was not about numbers on a screen. It was about watching the sky, the sun, and the stars to make sense of life itself. And by the end of this journey, you're going to understand why early civilizations needed ways to measure time, how they did it with simple tools, and why these ideas shape the world we live in today. Before we go any further, if you enjoy this kind of deep and simple exploration, a quick like or subscribe really helps the channel grow. It's a small thing for you, but it makes a big difference. For me, now let's begin. Long before the invention of clocks or the marking of hours with metal and gear, human beings lived in a world governed by natural rhythms. The rising and setting of the sun was the first measure of daily life. Its light and warmth dictated activity, guiding people from sleep to work, from rest to travel. Shadows stretched and contracted across open plains, rocky hills, and riverbanks, offering a visual gauge of the day's progress. Ancient people watched these movements with careful attention. They noticed the changes in length, the subtle differences that indicated the season, and the shifting paths across the sky that presaged the coming of new weather. These observations were not abstract. They had immediate practical importance. Knowing when the sun would rise allowed for the planning of hunting or farming. Predicting the evening guided the return to shelter. The day and night cycle became the first natural clock, the most reliable signal of time available in a world without mechanical aids. The moon, too, played a crucial role. Its changing phases offered a larger, slower cycle that complemented the daily pattern of the sun. From new moon to full moon and back, humans could track roughly the passage of a month. Hunters observed the moon's illumination in the night sky, noting how the changing light affected the behavior of animals. Farmers marked the waxing and waning of the moon to guide planting and harvesting. Each phase carried its own rhythm, one that could be counted and remembered. The moon's regularity allowed early civilizations to construct simple calendars, dividing the year into months even before formal numbering systems existed. These observations formed the foundation of communal timing, linking activity to a shared celestial rhythm. Beyond the sun and moon, the stars offered another layer of temporal measurement. On clear nights, ancient observers recognized patterns in the sky. Constellations appeared in fixed sequences, rising and setting with predictable regularity. The position of particular stars marked the season, indicated the proper times to sow or reap, and even suggested the timing of ritual events. In Egypt, for example, the heliacal rising of Sirius signaled the coming of the annual flood of the Nile. This natural occurrence became a cornerstone for agricultural planning. Across the world, from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, humans learned to read the night sky. They noted how some stars shifted slowly over weeks and months, while others appeared briefly and disappeared, marking the cyclical passage of time. The changing positions of celestial bodies also offered clues about longer intervals. By observing the sun's path through the sky over the course of a year, people could identify solstices and equinoxes. These events divided the solar year into recognizable periods, each associated with specific environmental changes. The longest day, the shortest day, and the days when day and night were equal became reference points for early societies. With careful attention, humans began to track not just hours and days, but seasons, laying the groundwork for early agricultural calendars. The movements of the sun and stars were measured against landmarks such as mountains, trees, or constructed markers. Alignments of stones or simple markers in open fields provided reference points that could be observed repeatedly, allowing consistency in timekeeping without any mechanical device. Wind, water, and tides contributed additional cues. The rhythm of the ocean's tide, driven by lunar influence, marked hours and days in coastal communities. Observing the direction and strength of prevailing winds allowed sailors to anticipate weather and navigate more reliably. Flowing rivers provided a sense of ongoing motion, and their patterns of swelling and shrinking during seasonal changes informed early agricultural planning. Humans learned to see time in these natural processes, to synchronize their actions with forces they could not control but could reliably predict. Every observable phenomenon became part of a larger temporal framework, a way to order life without any tools except eyes, memory, and shared understanding. In addition to practical observation, these natural cycles influence rituals and social organization. Festivals often coincided with specific astronomical events or seasonal changes. The rising sun on a particular date might signal a celebration, a time to plant, or a time to rest. The full moon could mark a communal gathering, a hunting event, or a religious observance. In this way, early humans intertwined social life with natural timekeeping. Awareness of the sky and natural cycles was not merely scientific, it was woven into the rhythm of daily existence. Community activity depended on collective recognition of these patterns, and shared observation became an early form of synchronization among individuals. Patterns in the sky were recorded in various ways. In some regions, people painted images or carved symbols that represented stars, moons, or the sun. Early petroglyphs often depict celestial bodies alongside human or animal figures, suggesting a conceptual link between the cycles of nature and human activity. These marks served as mnemonic devices, reminding people when to plant, when to hunt, and when to prepare for seasonal shifts. In other areas, simple alignments of stones or other materials created rudimentary observatories. Placing upright stones in rows that corresponded to the sunrise on solstices allowed repeated observations over generations. These structures offered fixed reference points to track time across days and seasons, integrating memory, observation, and physical markers into a coherent system. The connection between natural phenomena and human activity also extended to storytelling and oral tradition. Songs, chants, and myths often encoded information about the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. Knowledge about when to fish, hunt, or plant was passed down through generations in this way. Oral methods were effective because they reinforced observation with narrative, making it easier to remember and communicate the temporal knowledge that governed survival. In this sense, timekeeping was inseparable from culture. Human beings did not simply observe, they embedded what they observed into patterns of understanding, ensuring that temporal knowledge persisted beyond the individual. Early humans also noticed longer, less obvious cycles. Some natural rhythms spanned multiple years, such as the migration of animals, the flowering of specific plants, or the recurrence of certain climatic patterns. These observations allowed communities to anticipate rare but critical events, like floods or dry periods. Keeping track of these longer cycles required careful memory and recording, often in the form of simple notches on bones, sticks, or stones. By marking events and counting intervals, Early societies extended their understanding of time beyond immediate daily or monthly cycles, beginning to grasp the concept of recurring temporal patterns that shaped survival and planning. Everyday life was shaped by this constant observation. The rising sun demanded waking and movement. The moon guided nighttime travel and hunting. The stars marked the months and seasons. The wind, water, and tides informed both navigation and agriculture. By combining all these cues, humans developed a comprehensive sense of time that was both practical and deeply tied to their environment. Timekeeping was not abstract but experiential, learned by living closely with nature. It was a system of awareness, requiring attention, memory, and communication. The rhythms of the world were internalized, allowing people to organize life, coordinate with others, and respond to environmental changes with foresight. In this way, ancient timekeeping was immersive. People did not measure time as a series of abstract units, but as a continuous flow of observable events. Every sunrise, shadow, and star contributed to a tapestry of temporal understanding. By observing, remembering, marking, and communicating these natural cues, early humans created the first functional systems of time measurement. These systems were rooted in the world itself, reflecting the intricate connections between human activity and the rhythms of the earth, moon, and stars. The earliest civilizations depended on these observations, building a foundation that would eventually lead to more formalized, mechanical, and mathematical approaches to understanding and measuring time. After generations of observing the natural rhythms of the sun, moon, and stars, human beings began to create tools that could measure time more precisely. Among the earliest and most widespread of these tools was the sundial. The sundial translated the sun's movement across the sky into observable and countable measures. In ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, people discovered that a simple vertical stick, called a gnomon, could cast a shadow that moved in a steady, predictable way. By marking the positions of the shadow at regular intervals, observers could divide the day into distinct periods. The simplicity of the device belied its usefulness. With careful attention, the shadow's motion became a reliable indicator of the time, allowing communities to structure daily life, from work schedules to religious practices. Sundials took many forms. The basic gnomon, often a straight rod, was mounted upright on a flat surface. Early Egyptian examples were constructed in open courtyards, where sunlight fell across carefully measured lines etched into stone or sand. Observers would watch the shadow sweep from east to west, noting its position against the marked divisions. In Mesopotamia, similar devices appeared, sometimes incorporated into the architecture of temples or public spaces. These structures not only provided a practical means to measure time, but also reflected the importance of celestial observation in public and ceremonial life. Accuracy was achieved through careful placement, ensuring that the gnomon was oriented correctly in relation to true north, and that the lines marked the hours according to the latitude of the site. Some sundials were designed for portability. Small, carved devices could be adjusted for the sun's angle and carried for use in travel or trade. These smaller instruments allowed merchants and officials to coordinate activities without relying on environmental cues alone. The adaptability of sundials also made them suitable for different latitudes and climates. In regions closer to the equator, the sun's path was more direct and consistent, while in higher latitudes, the angle of sunlight varied more significantly with the seasons. Sundial makers learned to account for these differences, adjusting the gnomon's angle and the layout of hour lines to match local conditions. This careful attention to geometry and observation reflected an early understanding of how the sun's apparent movement changed across the year. Seasonal changes were another challenge that sundial users faced. During the winter, the sun rose more slowly and traveled a lower path across the sky, while in summer, its arc was higher and longer. To maintain accuracy, some sundials incorporated additional lines to indicate the solstices, marking the longest and shortest days of the year. Others used curved hour lines, allowing the shadow to fall accurately regardless of seasonal variation. Observers could use these marks not only to tell the hour, but also to understand the changing length of days. In this way, the sundial was not simply a tool for daily measurement. It also became an instrument for tracking the year's progress, connecting the hours of the day with the broader cycles of nature. The design of sundials varied widely. Egyptian sundials often use flat horizontal surfaces with gnomons aligned to the north-south axis. Mesopotamian versions sometimes employed inclined planes, tilting the shadow-casting element to better correspond with the sun's path. In Greece, sundials became more mathematically sophisticated. Greek scholars studied the angles and lengths of shadows, developing instruments that could provide more precise readings. They experimented with vertical, horizontal, and hemispherical designs, observing how geometry and astronomy combined to improve time measurement. These innovations demonstrated a growing understanding of both the principles of light and the movement of the sun, reflecting an analytical approach to what had previously been intuitive observation. Despite their usefulness, sundials had clear limitations. Their effectiveness depended entirely on sunlight. On cloudy days, during rain, or in the darkness of night, a sundial could provide no measure of the hours. The device was also sensitive to latitude. A gnomon, designed for one location, could not simply be moved to another region without recalibration. If placed incorrectly, the shadow would give inaccurate readings, undermining the reliability of the tool. Sundials also required careful leveling and orientation. A slight tilt or misalignment could shift the shadow, producing errors in the division of hours. Users had to understand these constraints and account for them, often combining sundial readings with other observations to maintain a coherent sense of time throughout the day. Even with these limitations, sundials were central to daily life. In Egypt, temple priests used them to coordinate rituals, aligning ceremonies with specific hours dictated by the sun. In Mesopotamia, civic authorities could schedule public events, markets, and labor shifts, relying on the sundial as a communal reference. The movement of the shadow became a shared language, a visual representation of the passage of time that everyone could observe. Children growing up in these societies would learn the patterns of shadow and light, internalizing the rhythm of the day through repeated exposure. The sundial thus acted as both a practical tool and a teacher, linking human activity to the celestial movements that shape the environment. The integration of sundials with architectural and urban design further emphasized their importance. Courtyards, temple floors, and open squares were carefully aligned to capture the sun's path, maximizing the visibility and accuracy of shadows. Stones or lines marked the hours, and in some cases, additional symbols indicated specific seasonal points, such as equinoxes or the rising of important stars. Observers could stand at a fixed location and see both the current hour and hints of the approaching season, blending daily and yearly measurement into a single experience. Sundials became instruments that connected humans to both the immediate present and the broader natural cycles, reinforcing an understanding of time as a continuous, observable flow. The conceptual simplicity of the sundial was matched by the subtlety of its application, while the principle, a shadow cast by a stick, was easy to grasp. The calibration required precision, careful measurement of angles, attention to the sun's declination, and awareness of the changing day length demanded observation and mathematical reasoning. In this way, sundials combined empirical experience with early analytical thinking. Observers learned to reconcile what they saw with what they expected, adjusting for seasonal changes, latitude differences, and imperfections in the environment. These practices reflected an early scientific approach: careful observation, repeated measurement, and incremental refinement to align human perception with natural reality. Over centuries, sundials became both scientific instruments and cultural symbols. They appeared in temples, public squares, and private gardens, marking the human desire to structure life around observable rhythms. As knowledge spread, different civilizations adapted the sundial to their specific needs, incorporating innovations that reflected local conditions and cosmological beliefs. The shadow, a simple consequence of light, became a messenger of time. Its silent motion connected humans to the sun's journey across the sky, providing a tangible sense of progression from dawn to dusk. Through sundials, people translated the abstract concept of hours into a concrete, visual experience, bridging observation with daily practice and setting the stage for later mechanical developments. Alongside the sundial, ancient civilizations discovered other ways to measure time, particularly when sunlight was absent or inconsistent. Water clocks, known as clepsydras, became one of the most important innovations for this purpose. The principle was simple yet effective. A container held water that either flowed in or out at a steady rate, and marks on the container indicated the passage of time. In Egypt, these devices appeared as early as the 2nd millennium BCE. Babylonian scholars also developed similar instruments, while in China, clepsydras became an essential tool for courts and observatories. Water offered a continuous measure that did not rely on the sun, enabling time to be tracked even at night or during cloudy days. The basic mechanics of a water clock required careful observation and construction. A vessel with a small hole at the bottom allowed water to drip at a near constant speed. As the water level fell, it passed lines or notches that represented hours or smaller divisions of time. Some clepsydras were designed to fill a second container instead, inverting the process but producing the same gradual movement. Accuracy depended on the consistency of the flow, which could be influenced by temperature, water purity, and the shape of the hole. Ancient engineers experimented with these variables, often creating vessels of precise dimensions and materials to maintain regular flow. Calibration was essential, and repeated adjustments were made until the device produced a predictable measure of the passing hours. Water clocks served practical and ceremonial purposes. In Egypt, priests used clepsydras to time rituals with exacting precision. Religious ceremonies required actions at specific intervals, and the steady movement of water provided a reliable signal. In Babylon, judges relied on water clocks to limit speeches or ensure fairness during trials, marking the beginning and end of each speaker's time. Chinese courts adopted water clocks to coordinate imperial schedules, monitor official duties, and schedule meetings. In these settings, the clepsydra was more than a tool. It became a central element in the organization of society. It allowed communities to structure events, enforce rules, and maintain order based on measurable intervals, rather than subjective perception. Integration with astronomical observations enhanced the usefulness of water clocks. In several cultures, Clepsydras were paired with star charts, sundials, or lunar calendars. Astronomers used water clocks to measure the intervals between the rising of stars or the changing positions of constellations. This allowed for more precise recordings of celestial events. In China, mechanical clepsydras eventually incorporated gears and escapements to regulate water flow, linking the measurement of time to observation of the heavens. By connecting flowing water to the sky, these early instruments bridged the gap between terrestrial activity and celestial patterns, reinforcing a systematic understanding of temporal cycles. The design of water clocks varied considerably. Some were simple bowls with marked interiors, suitable for domestic or small-scale use. Others were elaborate devices, constructed from bronze or stone, with multiple containers, channels, and regulators to maintain flow. Certain Chinese models included mechanical indicators, such as floating markers or wheels, that visually represented time as it passed. These variations reflected both cultural priorities and technical knowledge. While some societies emphasized practicality and ease of construction, others invested in complexity to demonstrate skill, authority, or alignment with celestial observation. In each case, the water clock transformed the abstract concept of time into a visible, trackable process. Compared with sundials, water clocks had distinct advantages. They functioned independently of sunlight, allowing people to measure time at night or indoors. They provided a continuous smooth measure, rather than the segmented position-dependent reading of a shadow. Water clocks could also be adjusted to different lengths of hours or intervals, accommodating cultural or practical needs. In ceremonial contexts, they were particularly valuable, as they offered a silent and predictable means to regulate activity. Unlike sundials, which required careful attention and clear skies, a clepsydra could quietly mark time with minimal observation, freeing users to focus on other tasks while still maintaining temporal order. Despite their advantages, water clocks also presented challenges. The flow of water could vary due to environmental factors. Temperature changes might cause expansion or contraction, affecting the rate of flow. Impurities in the water could clog holes, and sediment could accumulate, altering measurements. Calibration required ongoing attention, and the accuracy of the device often depended on repeated adjustments and observation. Furthermore, large or complex clepsydras demanded skilled construction and maintenance. In some cases, particularly elaborate instruments were reserved for temples, courts, or observatories, limiting widespread domestic use. These constraints highlighted the balance between practicality and precision that ancient societies navigated in measuring time. Water clocks also reflected an understanding of the relationship between natural phenomena and human activity. The steady flow of water mirrored the continuous movement of the sun and stars. It provided a rhythm that could be counted, recorded, and compared with celestial cycles. Observers began to link the passing of hours with larger patterns in nature, reinforcing a holistic approach to timekeeping. By observing both the water and the sky, early humans developed a layered understanding of temporal flow, integrating multiple systems to achieve consistency and reliability. In this sense, clepsydras were not only practical tools, but also instruments of observation and reflection, connecting everyday life with broader cosmic patterns. The cultural impact of water clocks was significant. In Egypt, inscriptions indicate that priests meticulously recorded intervals for religious rites. Babylonian texts describe the use of clepsydras in public administration and judicial proceedings. Chinese documents from the Zhou and Han periods detail sophisticated water-driven mechanisms that regulated government schedules and astronomical observations. Across these regions, the ability to measure time precisely elevated social organization and ceremonial practice. It allowed societies to synchronize activities, maintain fairness, and harmonize human action with observable natural cycles. The water clock became both a scientific instrument and a marker of civilization's growing complexity. The continued refinement of water clocks demonstrated an early scientific approach. Craftsmen and scholars experimented with container shapes, hole sizes, and flow regulators. Observers carefully measured output against expected intervals, adjusting variables to improve accuracy. In some cases, additional features were added, such as floats, markers, or levers, to create visual or auditory signals for time passage. These modifications show an empirical understanding, trial, observation, and correction. Water clocks, therefore, illustrate not just a technological solution, but a process of learning and refinement, combining practical need with systematic observation and incremental improvement. By combining water clocks with other forms of timekeeping, ancient societies achieved a fuller sense of temporal control. Sundials offered a visual measure dependent on daylight, while clepsydras provided continuous tracking independent of sunlight. Together, these systems complemented each other, enabling communities to measure the day accurately, observe celestial patterns, and structure social and ceremonial activities. This duality of observation, shadow, and flow reflects an early understanding of the complexity of time. It was not a single phenomenon, but a multidimensional process, observable through multiple natural and engineered systems. The widespread adoption of water clocks also underscores the human drive to quantify the passage of time. Beyond immediate practical needs, clepsydras represented a desire to standardize and communicate temporal intervals across society. By providing a shared, observable measure, water clocks help synchronize communities, coordinate labor, and enforce rituals. Their use bridged the natural and the human-made, linking flowing water to structured action and setting a precedent for later mechanical devices. The innovation of water clocks reveals how observation, creativity, and practical need combined to produce tools that made time tangible, measurable, and socially meaningful. As humans grew more dependent on agriculture, they needed to understand the larger cycles of the year. Daily and hourly measurements were useful, but they could not guide planting, harvesting, or the timing of festivals. This need gave rise to early calendars, tools that organized time over months and seasons. The first calendars were based on observation of the moon and sun. People noticed that the moon passed through phases, from new to full and back, over roughly 29 or 30 days. Counting these cycles allowed the creation of lunar months. In contrast, the sun's movement across the sky defined the solar year, marking the passage of seasons. Combining these observations provided a framework for longer-term planning and coordination of agricultural life. In Sumer, one of the earliest civilizations, records show that priests tracked the phases of the moon to divide the year into months. They inscribed observations on clay tablets, noting when particular stars rose or set, and when the moon reached certain points in its cycle. These records were not just for keeping time. They guided sowing and harvesting. Farmers planted crops when certain stars appeared at night, correlating celestial events with seasonal change. This early use of astronomy for practical life demonstrates how timekeeping evolved from observation to application. The lunar calendar was central to maintaining agricultural productivity and predicting seasonal patterns in Mesopotamia. Egyptians also developed sophisticated timekeeping systems. Observing the annual flooding of the Nile, they recognized that it coincided with the heliacal rising of the star Sirius. This natural signal marked the beginning of a new year. By tracking Sirius and other stars, Egyptian priests created a solar-based calendar that divided the year into 12 months of 30 days, with additional days added to match the solar cycle. This system allowed for precise planning of planting, harvest, and religious festivals. Temples often had aligned structures or windows that framed the sunrise at key times, allowing priests to calibrate calendars with both observation and ritual. Their approach combined astronomy, environmental awareness, and social organization into a coherent temporal framework. In Mesoamerica, the Mayans developed a dual calendar system that reflected both lunar and solar cycles. The ritual calendar, based on 20-day months, guided ceremonies and community events, while the solar calendar, with 18 months of 20 days plus additional days, regulated agriculture and civil activities. The Mayans observed the sun, moon, and planets carefully, using their movements to refine the calendar and predict eclipses or seasonal shifts. Their calendars were precise and remarkably complex, demonstrating an understanding of astronomical patterns and a recognition of the practical needs of agriculture. Festivals and ritual observances were timed with the cycles of the heavens, illustrating a deep connection between celestial phenomena and human life. In China, early calendars also combined lunar and solar observations. By tracking the moon's phases and the sun's position, Chinese astronomers could divide the year into months and seasons, predicting the arrival of rains, floods, and harvest periods. These calendars were critical for agriculture, especially rice cultivation, which depended on careful timing of planting and irrigation. Astronomers observed the horizon to note the rising and setting of stars, and they recorded patterns of solar movement to anticipate seasonal shifts. Over time, they developed intercalary months to reconcile the differences between lunar and solar cycles, creating a calendar that was both accurate and flexible. The practical demands of feeding a growing population drove refinement in time measurement, showing how science and society were closely linked. Agriculture was the primary motivator for calendar accuracy across all these cultures. Farmers needed to know when to sow seeds, irrigate fields, and harvest crops. Missing the right moment could result in poor yields or crop failure. Observing celestial patterns allowed humans to predict seasons long before thermometers or weather forecasts existed. In every region, calendars served as a bridge between observation and action, translating the movement of celestial bodies into practical schedules for planting, tending, and gathering food. They provided continuity, ensuring that knowledge passed from one generation to the next, allowing societies to survive and thrive in often unpredictable natural environments. Festivals were closely tied to these calendars. In many cultures, celebrations coincided with the change of seasons, the appearance of particular stars, or lunar phases. In Egypt, religious ceremonies marked the beginning of the new year with the Nile flood. In Mesopotamia, festivals followed the lunar calendar, aligning public rituals with celestial events. Mayan ceremonies often occurred at specific points in the solar or ritual calendar, emphasizing the rhythm of nature in community life. In China, seasonal festivals reflected the solar divisions and agricultural milestones, helping coordinate communal labor and cultural practice. The timing of festivals reinforced the importance of calendars, integrating social and spiritual life with natural cycles. Observation was key to refining these calendars. Astronomers noted small deviations between predicted events and actual occurrences, adjusting months, leap days, or intercalary periods accordingly. In Egypt, the slight mismatch between the lunar cycle and the solar year led to incremental corrections over generations. In Babylon, priest astronomers recorded eclipses and planetary movements, using them to improve accuracy. The Mayans observed the Sun and Venus carefully, predicting patterns that were essential for ritual and agriculture. In China, astronomers continually tracked the moon, sun, and stars to synchronize festivals, court duties, and planting schedules. These observations show a deliberate effort to understand the natural world and to translate its rhythms into reliable systems of time. Calendars also provided a framework for governance and planning. Rulers could organize labor, collect taxes, and schedule construction according to predictable intervals. Agricultural planning required the coordination of communities, and festivals provided temporal markers for economic, social, and religious life. By integrating observation with structured record-keeping, ancient civilizations established a sense of order and continuity. Time became not only a natural phenomenon, but also a shared human construct, mediated through tools, observation, and social practice. In practical terms, calendars allowed societies to anticipate environmental changes and adjust accordingly. Farmers could prepare for floods, droughts, or frosts. Traders could align journeys with seasons of favorable weather. Religious and social leaders could plan ceremonies that reinforced communal cohesion. The alignment of lunar and solar cycles with human activity created a framework that balanced natural rhythms with social need. The process of observation, recording, and adjustment became systematic, laying the foundation for later scientific study and mechanical timekeeping. Calendars transformed time from an abstract flow into a structured, actionable guide for life. The development of calendars reflects the deep interconnection between humans and the cosmos. Observation of celestial bodies, careful measurement, and repeated verification allowed ancient societies to predict the rhythms of nature. These tools provided stability, allowing agriculture to flourish and communities to thrive. Festivals, rituals, and governance all relied on these shared temporal frameworks. From Egypt to Babylon, from Mesoamerica to China, humans found patterns in the sky and translated them into systems that structured daily life, coordinated collective activity, and maintained social cohesion. The careful study of lunar and solar cycles demonstrates how practical necessity inspired sophisticated understanding and systematic observation. Through the creation of early calendars, human beings learned to see time as both cyclical and measurable. They tracked repeating patterns in the heavens and tied them to life on Earth. Observational astronomy provided the data, while record-keeping, calculation, and cultural practice transformed it into usable schedules. Months, seasons, and years became units of organization, not only marking change, but guiding action. Calendars offered a bridge between natural events and human society, allowing the passage of time to be observed, understood, and integrated into the rhythms of life. This foundation set the stage for future innovations, including more precise instruments and methods that would continue to shape how civilizations measured and comprehended time. While the sun and moon provided guidance during the day and the month, stars offered a natural measure of time at night. People quickly realized that stars appeared in the sky in consistent sequences, rising and setting at predictable intervals. By watching these movements, ancient observers could track hours, nights, and even seasons without relying on daylight. The earliest star-based timekeeping required careful attention and memory. Observers noted the first appearance of a star over the horizon, its highest point in the sky, and the time when it disappeared from view. Over repeated cycles, they associated these positions with specific points in the night and the year. This method allowed communities to organize activity during darkness, from travel to religious observation. In Egypt, star clocks became sophisticated tools for nocturnal timekeeping. Priests divided the night into intervals using a set of stars known as decans. Each decan represented a group of stars that rose consecutively on the horizon, appearing at roughly 40-minute intervals over the course of the night. Observing which decan was visible allowed priests to determine the hour, guiding ritual activity with precision, even when the moon was not visible. These star clocks were recorded on ceilings of tombs and temples, illustrating the importance of astronomical knowledge in religious and cultural life. By tracking the decans, Egyptians achieved a structured understanding of nocturnal time that complemented solar and lunar observations, creating a continuous temporal framework throughout the day and night. Beyond Egypt, other cultures also relied on star observation for time measurement and navigation. In Polynesia, navigators used the rising and setting of specific stars to determine direction and estimate time while at sea. By memorizing the positions of constellations, their order of appearance, and seasonal changes, sailors could travel vast distances across open ocean without instruments. These star maps were internalized and passed down orally through generations, embedding time and space into cultural knowledge. Observing the sky provided a sense of rhythm and orientation that was essential for survival and exploration, demonstrating the practical applications of celestial observation beyond land-based societies. Native American communities developed similar methods for tracking time at night. Certain tribes observed the positions of stars to guide hunting, seasonal migration, and ceremonial activities. By recording the rising of specific stars or the alignment of constellations, communities could anticipate seasonal changes and coordinate social and economic activities. Knowledge of these cycles was preserved in oral tradition, stories, and symbolic markers. The sky served not only as a natural clock, but also as a canvas for cultural memory, linking temporal awareness with practical and spiritual life. Nighttime observation became an integrated aspect of living, showing that human reliance on celestial cues extended well beyond the day. Tracking stars was not uniform across the globe. Latitude played a critical role in how stars appeared and how they were used to measure time. Near the equator, constellations moved in nearly vertical arcs, rising and setting quickly, while closer to the poles, some stars remained visible year-round, circling the sky without setting. Observers in different regions had to adapt their methods to local conditions. Egyptian priests focused on stars that were prominent and predictable in their latitude, while Polynesian navigators memorized paths across the tropical sky. These differences shaped the practical techniques and cultural significance of star-based timekeeping, reflecting how local geography and observation shaped human understanding of temporal cycles. Stars also carried symbolic meaning in addition to practical utility. In Egypt, constellations were associated with gods, the afterlife, and the order of the cosmos. Observing the sky was simultaneously an act of measurement and spiritual reflection. Similarly, Polynesian and Native American peoples integrated celestial observation with myths, rituals, and social norms. The appearance of certain stars marked important ceremonies, the beginning of agricultural tasks, or the timing of migrations. The night sky became a shared reference point, a living calendar that provided both practical information and cultural cohesion. Time and meaning were intertwined, showing that measuring the night was as much a social and spiritual act as it was a technical one. Star clocks required careful attention to the changing seasons. The position of a star at a given time shifted gradually over months due to the motion of the Earth around the Sun. Observers accounted for this gradual drift, noting the first appearance or setting of key stars at specific times of the year. These observations allowed prediction of seasonal events, aiding in agricultural planning, festival timing, and navigation. By combining the cycles of multiple stars, humans could create a detailed map of nocturnal time that adapted across months and seasons. This practice extended the reach of early timekeeping beyond simple hours, integrating longer-term understanding of annual rhythms with nightly observation. Egyptian deacons also demonstrate the sophistication of early nocturnal timekeeping. Priests observed 36 groups of stars, each associated with a 10-day interval. As each deacon rose, its appearance marked the passage of an hour during the night. By watching the sequence over multiple nights, observers could predict future positions, refine their knowledge, and coordinate complex rituals. The use of deacons illustrates a systematic approach where observation, record-keeping, and repetition created reliable knowledge. This practice required careful attention to detail and a long-term memory of patterns, highlighting both the intellectual and practical aspects of early astronomy. In Polynesia, the ability to track time by stars was essential for survival. Long voyages required precise knowledge of when and where to navigate. Navigators memorized star positions relative to the horizon, noting changes throughout the year. By combining the appearance of stars with the known direction of travel, they could estimate both time and position. This dual use of stars for orientation and temporal measurement exemplifies the integration of observational skill with daily necessity. The method relied entirely on repeated experience, careful observation, and memory, demonstrating the human capacity to translate complex celestial patterns into practical knowledge without instruments. Native American techniques similarly illustrate adaptation to local conditions. Communities observed the seasonal return of certain stars to signal planting, hunting, or communal gatherings. Oral tradition and symbolic representations, such as rock carvings or painted markers, reinforced these observations. Unlike the fixed deacons of Egypt, these methods were more flexible, adapting to environmental variation and community needs. Observers combined multiple indicators, such as the moon, specific stars, and seasonal changes in flora and fauna, to maintain accurate knowledge of time. This multi-layered approach shows that timekeeping was a dynamic, integrated practice rather than a simple observation of the sky. Star observation also facilitated a sense of continuity across generations. Young members of a community learned the positions of stars and their associated temporal significance through teaching and practice. Knowledge of the night sky became part of cultural identity, embedded in songs, stories, and rituals. Observing stars was a communal experience, linking practical measurement with social learning. The rhythm of the night sky created a framework that guided both individual action and collective activity, demonstrating the deep interconnection between celestial cycles and human life. By combining nocturnal and diurnal observation, ancient societies achieved a near-continuous awareness of time. The sun guided daily activity, the moon tracked months, and stars mapped the night. Together, these systems allowed humans to plan, coordinate, and reflect across day and night. Star clocks extended the temporal horizon, bridging periods when sunlight was absent and providing a reliable measure for navigation, ritual, and seasonal prediction. Through careful observation, memorization, and cultural integration, humans transformed the night sky into a natural clock, creating knowledge that was both practical and deeply symbolic. The study of stars also enhanced scientific understanding. Observers noticed that some stars moved differently depending on latitude, leading to early concepts of horizon, celestial sphere, and seasonal variation. Recording these differences contributed to more accurate calendars, helped in agricultural planning, and informed navigation. Nighttime observation developed both technical skill and analytical thought, demonstrating that timekeeping was not simply a tool for convenience, but a systematic method to understand patterns in nature. By observing the stars, ancient peoples created an interwoven system of time that connected hours, months, and seasons with the celestial environment. In many societies, star-based measurement was inseparable from culture and ritual. Observing stars was both an act of precision and an expression of human connection to the cosmos. The regularity of celestial cycles offered a rhythm to life that was predictable yet awe-inspiring. Through nightly observation, humans learned to read patterns, anticipate change, and structure activity. Stars became markers of both practical and symbolic significance, illustrating the way in which natural phenomena guided daily life, communal coordination, and spiritual reflection. This method of measuring time formed a continuous, reliable system that complemented sunlight, shadow, and flowing water, extending temporal understanding into the darkness of night. As human understanding of time advanced, observation alone was sometimes not enough. The desire to measure time more precisely led to early mechanical innovations. In Hellenistic Greece, engineers began experimenting with gears and automata. These were not clocks as we know them today, but they represented the first attempts to translate motion into measurable intervals. Moving parts, wheels, and levers allowed the calculation of celestial events and the representation of cycles, such as lunar months and solar years. Such devices supplemented natural observation, offering a consistent physical representation of time that could operate even without careful attention from human observers. China also saw early mechanical developments. Artisans and scholars built water-driven automata and devices that incorporated wheels, escapements, and rotating indicators. These mechanisms often combined flowing water with gears, translating the movement of liquid into mechanical motion. In this way, they extended the principle of the clepsydra by providing continuous, visible feedback of time passage. Some devices included floating markers or rotating drums that displayed hours or divisions of the day. Mechanical engineering merged with observational knowledge, producing instruments that reflected both natural cycles and human ingenuity, making abstract time tangible and trackable. One of the most remarkable examples of early mechanical timekeeping is the Antikythera mechanism from Greece, dated to around the 1st century BCE. This complex device, recovered from a shipwreck off the coast of the island Antikythera, contained a series of interlocking bronze gears. Its design allowed the tracking of lunar and solar cycles, predicting eclipses, and displaying positions of the sun, moon, and possibly planets. The mechanism effectively acted as a portable astronomical calculator. The sophistication of its construction demonstrates that ancient engineers possessed an advanced understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and mechanics. It represents a bridge between observational timekeeping and conceptual modeling, translating the movement of celestial bodies into a machine-readable format. Mechanical devices like the Antikythera mechanism had practical value, but they also served educational and philosophical purposes. By modeling the cosmos with moving parts, humans could study the regularity of natural phenomena in a controlled environment. Scholars could visualize the cycles of the sun and moon without relying solely on nightly or daily observation. Mechanical instruments allowed repetition, experimentation, and the anticipation of future events. They reinforced the human ability to understand abstract patterns and to impose order on time, complementing observational methods such as sundials, water clocks, and star tracking. In this sense, mechanical timekeeping expanded both accuracy and comprehension, providing a tangible link between abstract concepts and the physical world. Despite their ingenuity, early mechanical devices were rare and exclusive. They required specialized knowledge to construct and maintain, as well as access to materials such as bronze and precision tools. Their use was often limited to temples, courts, or elite scholars. Common people rarely encountered such instruments, relying instead on sundials, water clocks, and the natural rhythms of day and night. This exclusivity reinforced the status of those who possessed the knowledge and skill to use these devices. Mechanical instruments were symbols of intellectual authority, demonstrating mastery over natural cycles and the ability to represent time mathematically, rather than merely observing it. The limitations of these early machines were also significant. While they could model cycles accurately, they were still dependent on careful calibration. Wear and tear could affect gear ratios, and errors in construction could propagate over time. Mechanical devices were not portable in most cases and required a stable, controlled environment to function properly. They did not replace observational techniques, but supplemented them, providing a way to check, predict, and visualize patterns. This combination of observation and mechanical modeling represents a transitional period in human timekeeping, where nature and technology work together to produce greater precision. The philosophical implications of mechanical timekeeping were profound. By constructing devices that mirrored celestial motion, humans began to conceptualize time as an abstract, measurable quantity, rather than solely as a sequence of observable events. The regular motion of gears and wheels offered a physical metaphor for the continuity and predictability of the universe. Scholars could consider hours, days, months, and years as discrete quantifiable units, moving beyond intuitive understanding towards systematic analysis. This shift in perception laid the groundwork for later mechanical clocks, and ultimately for modern scientific thought, where time is both observed and measured independently of human activity. Mechanical innovation also influenced cultural and scientific development. In Greece, the combination of astronomy and engineering allowed scholars to teach, predict, and model cosmic cycles. In China, automata and gear-driven instruments were used to schedule court events, religious ceremonies, and astronomical observations. These devices became tools for education, governance, and ritual, linking the measurement of time with societal organization. By providing consistent, repeatable motion, mechanical instruments allowed for greater planning and coordination, illustrating how abstract concepts could be translated into practical tools for daily life. The interplay between observation and mechanics highlights a key principle. Time could be understood both empirically and theoretically. Observational techniques provided raw data from the sun, moon, and stars. Mechanical devices processed and visualized these data, producing a model of time that could be studied, replicated, and communicated. The Antikythera mechanism and similar innovations represent the culmination of centuries of careful observation, mathematical reasoning, and engineering skill. They show that humans were capable of converting continuous natural phenomena into discrete mechanical movements, bridging the gap between lived experience and conceptual abstraction. Mechanical instruments also offered predictive power. By modeling the movements of celestial bodies, users could anticipate eclipses, solstices, and other astronomical events. This capability extended the scope of human planning and decision-making. Farmers could predict seasonal changes, priests could schedule rituals, and navigators could refine orientation and timing. The ability to foresee events through mechanical modeling represents a significant advance over observation alone, emphasizing foresight as a critical component of human understanding of time. Yet even with their advantages, early mechanical devices did not eliminate the need for observation. Precision depended on calibration against natural events, and errors accumulated if the underlying celestial cycles were misunderstood. Mechanical timekeeping existed in a symbiotic relationship with natural observation, each enhancing the other. This integration illustrates an early scientific mindset. Observation, experimentation, and modeling work together to create a more complete understanding of time. Mechanics did not replace the sky or the flowing river. It translated them into controlled, observable phenomena, providing a stable reference that could be studied systematically. In a broader sense, mechanical innovations reflected the human desire to master the invisible. Time is intangible, and the construction of gears, wheels, and automata provided a way to give it form. By externalizing temporal processes into physical devices, humans could manipulate, visualize, and predict the rhythms of the universe. This externalization reinforced both understanding and authority. As those who could build or interpret, such devices held knowledge that others relied upon. The act of measuring time mechanically became an expression of intellectual achievement and cultural sophistication, showing the deep connection between technology, science, and society in the ancient world. Through these early mechanical innovations, humans expanded their temporal awareness beyond immediate observation. The combination of gears, water, and astronomical knowledge allowed a representation of time that was continuous, predictable, and measurable. Devices like the Antikythera mechanism transformed abstract cycles into tangible motion, making time a manipulable element of human understanding. These instruments marked a significant step toward modern clocks, bridging the gap between empirical observation and conceptual abstraction, and setting the stage for the systematic measurement of hours, minutes, and seconds that would follow centuries later. Even with sundials, water clocks, and mechanical devices, early societies often required methods of marking time that could be perceived without sight. Daylight was limited, clouds obscured the sun, and complex instruments were not always accessible. To meet these needs, humans turned to auditory and tactile signals, creating systems that could communicate the passage of hours through sound or touch. Bells, gongs, and drums became tools to indicate time intervals, signal work periods, and coordinate communal activity. Their sound carried across distances, reaching people who were engaged in labor, prayer, or travel, creating a shared awareness of temporal structure. In many early civilizations, temples and civic centers housed bells or gongs that struck at regular intervals. In China, large bronze bells were used to announce the time of day to communities, especially during periods of agricultural work or ritual observance. The resonant tones could carry across villages, providing a consistent auditory marker of hours or parts of the day. Monasteries in Europe and Asia also adopted bells to structure prayer and meditation. Monks would gather or move to the next activity when the bell sounded, relying on sound rather than observation of the sun or mechanical devices. The auditory signals transformed abstract temporal concepts into an immediate sensory experience, linking community and individual activity to a measurable rhythm. Drums played a similar role in many societies. African and Native American communities used drum signals to coordinate labor, communicate over long distances, and maintain schedules for communal tasks. The rhythm of drumming marked intervals of work and rest, offering a tactile sense of duration. In some cases, drum sequences indicated the approach of evening, the start of markets, or the commencement of religious ceremonies. These patterns, learned and repeated, created a system of shared time that could be understood, even without literacy or formal instruments. Auditory markers, therefore, served both practical and cultural functions, embedding timekeeping into daily life and social structure. Sand clocks, or hourglasses, offered a tactile and visual measure of time. Consisting of two connected glass bulbs with sand flowing from one to the other, these instruments allowed for discrete measurement of intervals. Hourglasses were portable, predictable, and could be reset easily by turning the device over. Sailors used them to track shifts. Navigators relied on them for estimating travel times, and monks employed them to structure prayer intervals. Unlike auditory markers, hourglasses provided a visual or tactile experience, creating a continuous flow that could be monitored directly. In combination with bells or gongs, they allowed layered methods of tracking time, blending sensory experiences to reinforce accuracy. In monastic life, auditory and tactile timekeeping became essential. Monasteries often followed rigorous schedules of prayer, work, and study, which required precise coordination. Bells marked canonical hours, signaling meals, prayers, and labor periods. Hourglasses and similar devices ensured that the duration of meditation or reading could be measured accurately. The integration of sound and tactile indicators allowed communities to maintain synchronization without constant observation of the sun, water, or stars. These methods facilitated structured life in environments where light conditions, weather, or isolation made other forms of timekeeping difficult. Public use of auditory indicators was also widespread. In towns and villages, church bells or town gongs provided temporal cues for commerce, market opening, and community meetings. Workers in fields or workshops could gauge breaks and schedules without needing direct visual cues. In East Asia, gongs signaled shifts in governmental and commercial operations, creating a shared understanding of daily intervals. The sound became a bridge between personal awareness and collective coordination, allowing communities to organize labor, worship, and social interaction efficiently. Auditory timekeeping, therefore, was a critical method for managing society, supplementing visual and mechanical devices with a form that was immediately accessible to many. Cultural significance of auditory timekeeping was profound. Bells and drums were not merely tools. They became symbols of order, ritual, and authority. Their sound marked sacred spaces, ceremonial events, and socially important moments. In Japan, temple bells tolled to mark seasonal festivals, agricultural milestones, and daily activities. In Europe, the sound of church bells structured civic life, regulating work hours and social gatherings. The resonance of these sounds carried both practical and symbolic weight, embedding temporal awareness into the rhythm of community life. Hearing time rather than seeing it reinforced a sense of cohesion and shared human experience, demonstrating the integration of sound with cultural practice. Sand clocks offered additional layers of temporal measurement. Small, portable hourglasses could measure short intervals, such as the duration of a sermon or the timing of experiments in early scientific studies. Larger hourglasses indicated longer periods for work shifts or ceremonial activity. The predictability of sound flow allowed for repeated measurement, training users to develop a sense of duration and rhythm. Combined with auditory signals, they created a multisensory system of timekeeping that did not rely solely on observation of natural phenomena. Monks, sailors, and administrators all used these instruments to regulate human activity with precision and consistency. Auditory and tactile timekeeping was particularly valuable in situations where visual observation was impractical. Nighttime work, indoor labor, or foggy and overcast conditions made sundials and star observation less effective. Bells, gongs, and hourglasses offered alternatives that were reliable and comprehensible. The use of sound and touch allowed people to synchronize actions across distances, coordinating multiple individuals in agricultural, religious, and civic contexts. These methods highlight the human ability to adapt timekeeping to environmental and social constraints, ensuring continuity and organization regardless of circumstances. In addition to signaling hours, auditory cues often marked smaller subdivisions of time. For example, rhythmic drum beats could structure shifts or alert workers to transitions between tasks. Bells could chime multiple times to indicate intervals within an hour or to count repetitions in ritual practice. Sand clocks, when combined with these auditory markers, provided visual confirmation of duration and a tactile sense of progress. Together, these instruments created layered, complementary methods for tracking time, blending sensory modalities to enhance reliability and accessibility. Community synchronization depended heavily on these methods. Workers, worshippers, and traders learned to interpret auditory signals in relation to daily schedules. The shared understanding of sound patterns allowed societies to coordinate activities without reliance on sight. Monks understood the rhythm of bells and hourglasses. Farmers followed gongs to organize field labor, and sailors timed shifts using sand clocks. These practices ensured that human activity remained aligned, even when natural or mechanical observation was not feasible. Auditory and tactile indicators became integral to maintaining structure in daily life. The adoption of these methods reflects a broader principle. Time is not only visual, but experiential. Sound and touch create immediate, perceptible markers that translate abstract temporal intervals into actionable cues. Bells, gongs, drums, and sand clocks provided a sense of presence and flow, allowing humans to perceive and respond to time directly. These instruments illustrate how societies integrated multiple sensory channels to manage daily life, demonstrating ingenuity in overcoming environmental, technological, and social challenges. In cultural terms, the sounds of bells and drums became part of daily life. They marked sacred moments, structured work, and reinforced social norms. In monastic settings, each chime or toll carried ritual significance, creating a rhythm of devotion and discipline. In civic contexts, the signal of a bell or drum guided commerce and labor, ensuring coordination and fairness. The auditory dimension of timekeeping connected humans to each other and to the structure of their environment, making abstract intervals tangible and socially meaningful. Sound became a medium through which time was understood, shared, and regulated. These methods also facilitated education and learning. Young members of communities learned to associate specific sounds with temporal intervals, internalizing the rhythm of the day. Repetition, observation, and participation reinforced temporal awareness, creating intuitive understanding of hours and shifts. Monastic apprentices, agricultural laborers, and traders all relied on these cues to develop temporal literacy. The combination of sound, touch, and observation fostered practical knowledge that complemented written and mechanical systems, embedding timekeeping deeply into daily experience. Through auditory and tactile indicators, ancient humans expanded their ability to organize life. Bells, gongs, drums, and sand clocks supplemented sight-based and mechanical timekeeping, ensuring continuity and coordination in a variety of contexts. These systems allowed societies to function effectively, even in darkness, indoors, or in conditions that obscured natural cues. They also reinforced the cultural and symbolic dimensions of time, linking measurement with ritual, labor, and social cohesion. By relying on sound and touch, communities developed resilient methods to perceive and structure temporal flow, reflecting both practicality and ingenuity. As humans developed ways to measure time, the effect on society became profound. Timekeeping shaped labor, trade, and social organization in ways that extended far beyond daily observation of the sun or stars. Work could be scheduled more precisely, markets could open and close at agreed hours, and communal activities could follow shared rhythms. In agrarian societies, calendars determined the timing of planting and harvesting, ensuring productivity and reducing waste. Laborers could coordinate efforts, knowing when to begin and end tasks, while leaders used these divisions of time to manage collective activity. The ability to measure and standardize time created order, aligning human action with the natural cycles of day, night, and season. Calendars and clocks also influenced trade. Merchants needed to coordinate journeys and exchanges over long distances, and standardized measures of time allowed contracts, deliveries, and payments to be organized efficiently. Market days were scheduled according to lunar or solar calendars, providing predictable opportunities for commerce. Port authorities, trading posts, and caravan routes often relied on auditory or mechanical signals to indicate opening and closing times. The measurement of time transformed economic activity from a flexible, observation-based practice into a structured system that could support complex trade networks, regional economies, and inter-community exchange. Time became a medium that linked people across space, creating trust and reliability in social and commercial interactions. Festivals and legal deadlines were also closely tied to early timekeeping. Religious observances were scheduled according to lunar phases, solar positions, or seasonal markers. In Egypt, the rising of Sirius signaled the new year and the flooding of the Nile, dictating ceremonial activities and agricultural planning alike. In Mesopotamia, lunar calendars determined the dates of festivals, temple rituals, and civic celebrations. Legal matters, including tax collection, debt repayment, and civic duties, were similarly anchored to temporal markers. Establishing clear periods for these events reinforced social cohesion, allowed for predictable administration, and provided a shared temporal framework that connected everyday life with spiritual, political, and economic concerns. Political and religious authorities often controlled access to timekeeping knowledge. Priests, astronomers, and royal officials monitored the calendar, observed celestial events, and maintained instruments like sundials, water clocks, or star charts. This knowledge gave them power to coordinate labor, enforce ritual schedules, and regulate economic activity. By determining when important events occurred, these authorities exercised influence over the rhythms of community life. Timekeeping became both a practical tool and a symbol of authority, connecting scientific, Observation with governance and social hierarchy. The ability to interpret the heavens and translate celestial cycles into human schedules reinforced legitimacy and control, demonstrating the close link between temporal knowledge and political power. Timekeeping techniques were shared and adapted across cultures. Traders, travelers, and scholars carried instruments, ideas, and methods between regions. Greek and Egyptian astronomical knowledge spread throughout the Mediterranean, influencing Roman, Babylonian, and later Islamic scholars. Chinese innovations in water clocks, mechanical devices, and calendrical calculation moved along trade routes to Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia. Polynesian navigators passed star observation methods across islands in the Pacific. This cross-cultural transmission allowed societies to build on existing knowledge, refine techniques, and integrate new approaches into their own practices. Time measurement became a shared human endeavor, enriched by observation, experimentation, and collaboration across geography and culture. The interaction between scientific observation and societal need was evident in every form of timekeeping. Humans observed the sun, moon, stars, and flowing water, not solely out of curiosity, but to solve practical problems. When to plant crops, when to begin labor, when to conduct ceremonies. Knowledge of celestial cycles, mechanical principles, and auditory signals allowed communities to coordinate action in predictable ways. Observations were recorded, refined, and transmitted to meet the demands of daily life. Science was applied directly to social organization, and societal needs, in turn, guided the focus of observation. Calendars, clocks, and auditory markers all reflect this interplay, demonstrating that measurement of time was both an intellectual pursuit and a social tool. Labor organization relied on accurate time measurement. Farmers used calendars and celestial observation to anticipate seasonal work, while laborers in towns and construction projects relied on auditory cues, sand clocks, or mechanical indicators to manage shifts. In workshops, guilds, and marketplaces, regular intervals provided structure, allowing multiple individuals to work in synchrony. Time became a shared language, facilitating coordination across groups. The combination of daily, seasonal, and nocturnal measurement ensured that labor was not random, but aligned with natural cycles, improving efficiency and reinforcing collective responsibility. Trade and commerce were also transformed. Standardized time enabled merchants to coordinate long-distance transactions, schedule departures and arrivals, and fulfill contractual obligations. Navigators and port authorities depended on accurate measurement to maintain shipping schedules. Market timing, coordinated by bells or visual indicators, allowed producers and consumers to meet reliably. Cross-regional trade required synchronization, and the use of shared temporal frameworks strengthened economic networks. Through calendars, clocks, and observation, communities could expand the scale and reliability of commerce, demonstrating that time measurement was a critical foundation for organized economic life. Religious and civic life depended on predictable timing. Temples and shrines used astronomical observation, mechanical devices, or auditory cues to schedule rituals, ceremonies, and festivals. Civic authorities coordinated public events, such as assemblies, court hearings, and legal deadlines, using standardized temporal markers. Shared understanding of hours, days, and months reinforced communal cohesion, ensuring that social obligations and sacred observances aligned with natural cycles. The measurement of time, therefore, became both practical and symbolic, structuring human activity while connecting it to the cosmos. Access to timekeeping knowledge reinforced social hierarchies. Priests, scholars, and officials who understood celestial patterns, mechanical instruments, or calendar calculation held authority. They could schedule rituals, organize labor, and direct commerce with precision. Common people often relied on visual, auditory, or tactile cues without understanding the underlying principles. This distinction allowed elites to exercise control over temporal coordination, embedding scientific observation within political and religious authority. Time became a tool not only for measurement, but also for governance, structuring society through shared yet controlled knowledge. Cross-cultural exchange further enhanced temporal understanding. Instruments, methods, and observations traveled along trade routes, from Mesopotamia to Greece, Egypt to Rome, and China to Southeast Asia. Scholars compared techniques, refined calculations, and adapted innovations to local conditions. Observations of the sun, moon, stars, and natural cycles were shared, forming a collective knowledge base. This transmission facilitated the spread of mechanical devices, auditory signals, and calendar systems, allowing diverse societies to benefit from accumulated wisdom. Timekeeping was therefore both local and global, rooted in observation, yet enriched through exchange. The measurement of time also connected scientific knowledge with practical necessity. Observations of celestial bodies, water flow, and mechanical motion informed agriculture, commerce, and ritual. The feedback from societal activity, in turn, drove refinement in observation and technique. Calendars were adjusted for accuracy, mechanical devices were improved, and auditory systems were organized to meet social needs. The interplay between observation and application illustrates the dual nature of timekeeping. It was a scientific endeavor that existed to serve human life, creating order, coordination, and predictability across societies. In summary, timekeeping profoundly influenced social and cultural structures. Labor, trade, religious, observance, and civic life all depended on standardized temporal measurement. Calendars, clocks, sand timers, bells, and drums provided methods for coordinating human activity, linking observation of nature with the organization of society. Political and religious authorities exercised influence through control of temporal knowledge, while cross-cultural exchange allowed innovations to spread and improve. The measurement of time was not merely a technical exercise. It shaped how humans lived, worked, and understood their place in the natural and social world. By observing, calculating, and signaling the passage of hours, days, and seasons, ancient societies created frameworks that sustained order, facilitated cooperation, and connected human life to the rhythms of the cosmos. As humans refined methods of measuring time, they began to think about its nature. Time was no longer only something to observe or count. It became an abstract concept, a structure that existed beyond immediate events. Ancient civilizations developed different ideas about time, often shaped by what they could see in nature. Some cultures viewed time as cyclical, repeating in rhythms of day and night, the moon, and the seasons. Others considered time linear, progressing steadily from past to future. These conceptions influenced philosophy, science, and the way societies understood their place in the universe. In Greece, philosophers considered time both practically and abstractly. Thinkers like Plato and Aristotle reflected on the flow of time in relation to change and motion. Plato described time as a moving image of eternity, linked to the celestial cycles that humans could observe. Aristotle approached time as a measure of change, noting that it required a sequence of events to be meaningful. Observation of the sun, moon, and stars provided the data that informed these ideas. Through careful measurement of recurring patterns, Greek scholars began to see time not just as a tool for scheduling, but as a fundamental property of the cosmos, an order that could be studied, understood, and even predicted. In India, early texts recorded a vision of time that combined both cyclical and expansive perspectives. Vedic writings and later philosophical texts described the world in cycles of ages, or yugas, reflecting rhythms of creation and decay. Days, months, and years were observed and recorded, while cosmological cycles spanned thousands of years. Astronomical observations were intertwined with ritual and philosophical understanding. Calendars and star charts served practical needs, but they also connected humans to a larger framework of cosmic time, encouraging reflection on continuity, mortality, and the patterns of existence. Measuring time became a means of connecting everyday life to eternal cycles. China also contributed significantly to early philosophical reflection on time. Scholars observed the heavens meticulously, noting the movements of stars, planets, and the moon. These observations were recorded in detailed chronicles and calendars. Philosophers considered time as a way to understand harmony in nature, linking human activity to celestial order. Confucian writings emphasized the role of timing in governance and ritual, noting that proper action depended on alignment with natural cycles. Taoist thought often reflected on the flow of time as part of a greater dynamic order, emphasizing adaptation and observation. Measurement and reflection were intertwined, with empirical observation guiding philosophical insight. Observation of natural phenomena drove understanding of time in a scientific sense, recording the sunrise, the first appearance of a star, or the flow of water allowed humans to recognize regularity, pattern, and interval. These patterns were abstracted into units such as hours, days, and months, creating a framework for reasoning and planning. By noting repetition and variation, humans began to conceive of time as measurable, predictable, and analyzable. Observation moved beyond immediate survival needs, fostering insight into the structure of the cosmos. Measurement became a bridge from the tangible to the conceptual, connecting the senses to abstract understanding. Timekeeping thus became a cognitive tool, shaping human thought as well as human action. Instruments such as sundials, water clocks, and star charts transformed observations into models that could be studied and shared. Each observation reinforced the idea that natural processes followed orderly patterns, that cycles could be predicted, and that events could be anticipated. Humans began to think about time independently of immediate sensory input, imagining intervals, forecasting changes, and constructing systems to represent continuous flow. This abstraction allowed knowledge to grow, building a foundation for later mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. The shift from ritual-based measurement to precise observation marked a key development. Initially, time was measured in relation to ceremonial or agricultural needs, using approximate cues from the sun, moon, and stars. As techniques improved, observation became more exact. Positions of celestial bodies were recorded with greater care. Intervals were divided into smaller units, and instruments became more sophisticated. These practices enhanced accuracy, enabling predictions and calculations that went beyond routine life. Humans moved from measuring time for immediate practical purposes to studying its structure as a phenomenon in itself, deepening both understanding and control. Philosophical reflection also explored the relationship between human cognition and time. Ancient thinkers considered how perception influenced experience, noting that humans could recognize cycles, anticipate events, and conceptualize duration. time became an object of thought, something that could be reasoned about independently of immediate observation. The distinction between measured intervals and subjective experience laid the groundwork for later studies of temporal perception. By linking observation, measurement, and reflection, humans began to treat time as a dimension that could be understood, represented, and manipulated intellectually. Timekeeping instruments and observation fostered predictive reasoning. By recording patterns of celestial motion, humans learned to anticipate seasons, eclipses, and lunar cycles. These predictions allowed societies to plan agriculture, ritual, and navigation with confidence. The ability to forecast events reinforced the abstract concept of time as a continuous flow that extended beyond immediate experience. Observation and prediction created a feedback loop. Careful measurement led to conceptual understanding, which informed future observation, refining both practical skill and intellectual insight. In philosophy, cyclical and linear views coexisted. Cyclical time emphasized repetition and continuity, visible in the daily return of the sun, the phases of the moon, and seasonal rhythms. Linear time highlighted succession and direction, tracking progression from one event to the next, often in relation to historical or cosmological sequences. Ancient timekeepers integrated these views into their instruments and practices. Calendars combined cycles of the moon and sun. Mechanical devices modeled repeating patterns while allowing measurement of individual intervals. This dual approach created a sophisticated understanding of temporal structure, where patterns and progression were simultaneously recognized and studied. Cultural expression also reflected these concepts. Rituals, festivals, and ceremonies were often scheduled to align with observed celestial cycles, linking human activity to cosmic order. The timing of planting, harvesting, and religious observance reflected an understanding of intervals, seasonality, and the cyclical nature of life. Timekeeping was embedded in daily practice, philosophy, and cosmology, illustrating the integration of observation with reflection. The study of patterns in the heavens fostered an awareness of both regularity and change, creating a framework in which humans could situate themselves in a dynamic universe. Scientific investigation benefited from this reflective approach. Astronomy, mathematics, and engineering were informed by careful measurement and conceptualization of time. Recording celestial movements encouraged the development of calculation, geometry, and modeling. Mechanisms such as early gears and the Antikythera device represented the translation of observed cycles into engineered systems. Observation, reflection, and construction became intertwined, demonstrating that measurement of time was not only practical, but a driver of scientific thought. Humans were learning to represent abstract processes in tangible ways, linking cognition with technology and observation. Timekeeping also influenced ideas about causality and order. Recognizing regularity in natural cycles led to the understanding that events followed patterns that could be studied and anticipated. Philosophers and scientists alike considered how intervals, repetition, and duration structured reality. Measurement reinforced the notion that time was not arbitrary, but a property of nature itself. By abstracting and quantifying temporal intervals, humans could connect events, reason about sequences, and develop predictive models, forming the basis of systematic inquiry that extended into mathematics, astronomy, and beyond. The evolution of timekeeping demonstrates the gradual refinement of human thought. Early observations of shadows, water, and stars provided practical guidance. Mechanical devices and auditory or tactile cues extended precision and accessibility. Philosophical and scientific reflection transformed these experiences into concepts of linearity, cycles, and measurable intervals. Humans learned to treat time as both a practical tool and an abstract dimension, using observation to construct understanding and using understanding to guide further observation. This interplay between perception, measurement, and cognition illustrates the depth and complexity of early temporal knowledge. In reflecting on time, humans also considered mortality, change, and continuity. Cyclical models emphasized renewal, the return of seasons, and repeated celestial patterns. Linear models highlighted succession, progress, and irreversible events. The act of measuring time created awareness of both transience and regularity, linking human life to the broader cosmos. Observation of celestial phenomena reinforced the sense of order and predictability, while abstract reasoning allowed humans to grasp the unseen flow of hours, days, and years. Timekeeping thus became a bridge connecting sensory experience, intellectual reflection, and cultural practice, shaping human understanding of both life and the universe. The innovations of ancient civilizations left a lasting imprint on the ways humans would measure time for millennia to come. Sundials, water clocks, star charts, and early mechanical devices were more than tools. They were the foundation upon which medieval and modern timekeeping would develop. In Europe, during the Middle Ages, knowledge of sundials and water clocks informed the construction of mechanical tower clocks. Craftsmen adapted the principles of flowing water and moving shadows into gear-driven systems that could mark hours consistently, even in public spaces. The understanding that time could be divided, measured, and represented physically was a direct legacy of ancient ingenuity, carried forward across centuries. Medieval astronomers and clockmakers studied star charts and celestial cycles meticulously. The observation of the sun, moon, and stars remained critical for determining the calendar, predicting eclipses, and setting religious festivals. Instruments such as astrolabes, which allowed the measurement of celestial angles, combined ancient observational knowledge with new mechanical skill. The integration of astronomical observation with engineered devices continued the tradition of translating natural rhythms into human-made systems, a practice that linked empirical study with practical application. The insights gained from early timekeeping informed the refinement of clocks, the planning of civic life, and the scheduling of agricultural work. Mechanical clocks became increasingly precise, yet their design and function owed much to earlier experiments. The gear trains of the Antikythera mechanism, the predictable flow of water in clepsydras, and the calibration of sundials all inspired the principles of division, accuracy, and visual display. Clockmakers learned to construct mechanisms that could operate independently of daylight, weather, or manual oversight. Yet the conceptual roots were firmly planted in the observational and mechanical methods of antiquity. Every pendulum swing, every striking of the bell, every rotation of a hand around a dial carried echoes of ancient thought, connecting human ingenuity across time. Calendars also maintained their central role. Lunar and solar cycles, carefully recorded by the Sumerians, Egyptians, Mayans, and Chinese, continued to shape society. The Gregorian calendar, which eventually became the standard in much of the world, relied on centuries of observation, correction, and refinement. Understanding the length of the year, the timing of equinoxes, and the occurrence of leap years all stemmed from careful study of celestial cycles. Even today, the division of time into months, weeks, and hours reflects ancient insights. The same principles that guided planting, harvest, and religious celebration in antiquity remain embedded in contemporary life, demonstrating continuity between observation, practice, and societal rhythm. Humanity's desire to measure, segment, and control time is a persistent theme. From the earliest observations of shadows and stars to modern atomic clocks, there is a consistent drive to understand the passage of moments, anticipate events, and coordinate activity. Timekeeping satisfies both practical and intellectual needs. It structures labor, trade, and community life, while also providing a framework for reflection, planning, and prediction. Ancient systems remind us that the impulse to mark time is universal, arising from necessity, curiosity, and a desire to create order from the flow of nature. The tools may evolve, but the underlying purpose remains remarkably constant. Ancient ingenuity offers enduring lessons for contemporary science. Careful observation, methodical recording, and creative problem-solving characterized early approaches to time. Instruments like water clocks, star charts, and mechanical devices show that observation and engineering are complementary. The integration of multiple sensory and technological methods, visual, auditory, tactile, allowed humans to understand time more fully. Modern scientific practice continues to reflect this principle. Observation informs theory, theory guides experiment, and both are necessary to advance understanding. The careful reasoning of early astronomers, artisans, and mathematicians provides a model for rigorous, thoughtful study even today. Reflecting on the evolution of timekeeping reveals a broader human story. Ancient methods remind us that time is a shared experience, shaped by the rhythms of nature and the needs of society. Across cultures, civilizations developed ways to segment, predict, and synchronize daily life. Whether through sundials, water clocks, star risings, bells, or sand timers, humans created systems to coordinate action, plan the future, and understand the world. Timekeeping connects individuals to each other and to the cosmos, making abstract intervals tangible, perceptible, and meaningful. It is both practical and symbolic, a bridge between human cognition and natural order. The legacy of these systems is evident in everyday life. Clocks in homes, offices, and public spaces trace their ancestry to the sundials and mechanical devices of antiquity. Calendars continue to guide work, celebration, and planning. The measurement of hours, minutes, and seconds enables global coordination, transportation, commerce, and communication. Yet beneath the modern precision lies the same impulse that guided ancient peoples: to observe, understand, and structure the flow of time. The continuity of practice demonstrates the enduring value of the insights gained through centuries of careful study and innovation. Even the symbolic and cultural aspects of time persist. Bells, once used to signal work periods or prayer, continue to mark the start of school, office hours, or religious services. Celestial observation remains important for certain festivals, agricultural timing, and astronomical research. Ancient understanding of cyclical and linear patterns influences philosophy, science, and daily routine. The human need to align life with recurring patterns, to measure intervals, and to synchronize activity reflects the same principles seen in the careful records and instruments of earlier civilizations. Modern science and technology have taken timekeeping to new levels, but the foundation remains deeply rooted in ancient observation and invention. Atomic clocks measure seconds with extreme precision, satellites track celestial movement, and global positioning systems rely on accurate temporal data. Yet these innovations build upon principles developed thousands of years ago: observation of regular patterns, calibration against natural cycles, and mechanical or technological representation of time. In this way, the past and present are linked through a continuous effort to quantify and understand temporal flow. Time, in its essence, is a human construct that mirrors natural cycles. By observing the sun, moon, and stars, humans created units, systems, and instruments that allowed life to be organized and understood. From simple shadow observation to sophisticated mechanical and digital clocks, the trajectory of timekeeping reflects both ingenuity and necessity. Each development carries lessons in patience, precision, and adaptation, showing that progress in measurement is inseparable from careful observation and thoughtful application. Ancient techniques remind us that even the most abstract concepts can be rendered tangible through creativity and careful reasoning. As the story of timekeeping concludes, it becomes clear that humanity's relationship with time is both practical and philosophical. Early systems provided tools to organize labor, worship, and social activity. They also fostered reflection on the cosmos, cycles of nature, and the place of humans within larger patterns. The desire to observe, measure, and understand time bridges centuries, linking the meticulous work of ancient astronomers and artisans to modern scientific practice. Time is both a shared human experience and a personal awareness, shaped by observation, culture, and ingenuity. Ultimately, the legacy of ancient timekeeping is visible in every clock, calendar, and instrument we use today. It reminds us that measurement, observation, and reflection are intertwined. Humans have always sought to give form to the invisible, to create order from the continuous flow of nature, and to synchronize life with the cycles of the world around them. The lessons of ancient ingenuity continue to guide science, philosophy, and daily life, illustrating that time, while abstract, is inseparable from the human experience. Observation, adaptation, and careful measurement remain central to understanding the universe and coordinating existence within it. Through the lens of history, we can appreciate the depth and continuity of this pursuit. From shadows cast on stone to gears turning in bronze, from bells tolling across villages to the precision of modern clocks, humans have strived to understand and organize time. These efforts reflect curiosity, discipline, and creativity, demonstrating that timekeeping is as much an intellectual and cultural achievement as it is a technical one. The act of measuring time links us to ancestors, to natural cycles, and to the broader cosmos, creating continuity across space, generations, and thought. In reflecting on the legacy of timekeeping, it is evident that humanity has always sought to connect experience with structure. Ancient techniques, sundials, water clocks, star charts, bells, and hourglasses, provided both practical solutions and conceptual models. They established the principle that observation, measurement, and representation could transform abstract phenomena into actionable knowledge. Modern clocks, calendars, and temporal systems owe their existence to this foundation, demonstrating the enduring relevance of early ingenuity. Time is not merely counted, it is understood, applied, and shared across communities and generations. The story of human timekeeping, from its earliest forms to modern instruments, illustrates a continuous pursuit to perceive the invisible, to divide the continuous, and to harmonize life with natural cycles. Each generation built upon the knowledge and methods of the previous, refining observation, developing instruments, and creating new ways to comprehend the passage of hours, days, and years. The systems developed by ancient civilizations remain a testament to human curiosity, intellect, and the desire to structure existence. Through their legacy, time is made tangible, comprehensible, and universally shared. We see, in the end, that measuring time is both a practical necessity and a reflection of human thought. From simple shadows to complex mechanisms, from auditory signals to refined calendars, the effort to understand and control temporal flow has shaped society, culture, and science. It connects humanity across history, providing continuity and context. Timekeeping remains a shared human experience, linking observation with cognition, practical action with philosophical reflection, and past knowledge with future innovation. It is a bridge between the natural world and human understanding, guiding life, thought, and discovery.